Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Recruiter Table Talk. I'm JT O'Donnell, founder and CEO of Work It Daily, and I am so excited. Today, we're going to be talking about 8 steps to develop your 2023 hiring plan. And I am particularly lucky because I have an incredible group of women. Yes, women. They've assured me there are men working at the company, but there's an incredible group of women today from a company, Duffy Group. And they have been doing this for a very long time and are going to map out these steps for you in detail. So I want you to take notes or at least bookmark this so you can come back, because prior to the show, we were talking about just how important this is going to become in the next year, right? At the time that we're recording this, there's a lot of disruption going on in the workplace. Half of companies surveyed said that they're going to be streamlining their hiring. They're going to be streamlining, probably doing some form of restructuring or layoffs. But that doesn't mean that hiring stops. It means hiring becomes even more strategic. And that's why I'm really excited that we're doing this today. So I want to welcome all the ladies to the show. Let me bring them up here so they can say hello. In fact, let's bring them all the way up here. Hello. How are we?
Hello.
Hello.
So Kathleen, before we get started, you're the founder and CEO of Duffy Group. You've been doing this for a long time. As we go forth today, what do you really want people to keep in mind so they can get the most out of today's session?
I think the biggest thing is that this is a proactive process, and as recruiting professionals, we have to figure out how do we wrangle in our hiring leaders, and just like they do their strategic planning process, it's very, very much the same exercise that you're going through. So just hold their feet to the fire. We want to have some tips for you to be able to take back to your office and execute. And we look forward to hearing how this your journey goes.
Yeah, this is going to be an interactive session, folks. So feel free to put your questions over in the chat. We'll be sure to give them plenty of time to answer them for you. But now I want to get into it. I want to get started. So we're gonna dive straight into number one. And I'm pretty excited as we talk about this. So Sharon Grace, you're a practice leader at Duffy Group, and you're going to talk to us about this idea of building the budget and anticipating headcount as the foundation to this process. Tell us why.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to try to have a little fun with this budget topic here. So throughout my career, I have strategically partnered with many accounting and finance leaders and have discussed budgets. So here's a tip. Know your numbers. Yes, please. So build out your budget and anticipate your headcount, beginning with the open positions that you need to fill in the first quarter. So keep in mind, though, that you'll want to start the recruitment process now for those January, February hires. And as part of the budgeting process, create a clearly defined compensation plan with the salary range for open positions. Here's the key: before the start of the job search. Another yes, please. So be sure to note any wiggle room in the starting salaries, know the internal equities, and be mindful of the transparency pay laws, the pay transparency laws that require the employers to disclose the salary ranges for these open positions. So the current states with the laws are New York, Colorado, Connecticut, Maryland, Nevada, Rhode Island, and Washington. There you have it.
Okay, so first of all, this has been such a controversial topic, hasn't it, Sharon? Because,
Yes.
To have that many states already starting to adopt this, and the fact that it's probably going to happen, across the country, there's obviously been some pushback. But I really love that you're saying, look, let's just do this. It helps everybody. It helps you. It helps the talent, to make this process more efficient, and really holds people to figure out what should we be paying. My question to you is, if you don't mind, as a follow-up, Sharon, people get really worried about, well, am I going to be held to this exact number? I'm assuming you're giving some pretty decent pay bands, right? There's some wiggle room there. Is that safe?
Yeah, I am hearing and seeing about wide ranges. Now, there's a lot of wonkiness, if that makes sense, going on. We're a lot of uncomfortable things that are coming to light, especially, depending on the industry. I work a lot in higher education, and they're not up to date. So there are some challenges that we're all going to be working through.
But at least challenges are also opportunities, right?
That's
Because
right.
we don't have to do it one way or another, which I love.
That's
I
right.
love that I think
We're
that's
ahead
one
of it.
yeah, that I love about Duffy Group. And all the time that I've known you, you're not hiding this from the client. You're not getting them in there and then dropping this on them. You're telling them, look, we're planning this now up front, right? We're going to turn this challenge into opportunity, which is phenomenal. I love it. Love it. Okay. So we're moving on. Let's talk about number 2, meeting with recruiting partners. So Georgia, you're the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives. Talk to us about the importance of spending time with these folks.
So this is an area, just as you had just commented about how, it's a moving target right now. And I view myself as a consultant of Duffy Group, and I think we all do. So when we're working with clients, which I do every day, the key thing that I'm there to assess is their needs. And oftentimes, JT, hiring managers don't have the capacity to take a step back. So when they're meeting with me, it's that opportunity to take a step back. I'm a consultant to them. The idea here is I ask very specific questions. Really, that's the focus. And as we're going into 2023, it's really kind of a nice session to have. So I get that opportunity to ask these questions. And the kind of questions that I'm asking to do this deep dive have to do with who currently manages your recruiting. What capacity do they have? I'm trying to figure out their capacity. Where are the needs? Do you just post the job? What actually does a recruiter do? How are you being strategic with getting those jobs posted or getting the information out about the jobs? What are you saying about the opportunities? And are you seeing a good talent flow? I mean, sometimes from the hiring manager to the recruiter, they don't often know what is the gap here. Why are we not finding the right talent? So it's really my job to help that manager walk through what it is, where the gaps might be, and if we are a good fit for their needs. Because at Duffy Group, we want to be partners. So we want to be a good fit. Sometimes it's just a reorganization they may need internally. But sometimes they truly need partners, long-term partners that help them strategize year over year. So that's more or less what we do and what I do when I'm in conversation with the hiring manager or a leader.
That's really interesting because you might be going into organizations where there's not this very well-developed recruitment strategy, where the hiring managers really are. That's just a small portion of their time. It's not their main focus. And therefore, it's possible they're doing things that aren't optimal or efficient, right? So it sounds like that's such a good place to start to figure out where you're going to help them work smarter, maybe save money, be more efficient, which I love. I mean, that you kept saying strategic, and I get that in that sense. It's really amazing. When you think about that, and just to kind of put you in the hot seat, because why not? When you think about that strategy piece, is there one thing that stands out that you find a lot of companies don't take into consideration? Maybe something they just, you're talking it through and you're realizing they just weren't thinking about that aspect of recruiting and its impact?
I think it's the sizzle. I think it's how they're marketing themselves. They take it for granted that if they're posting the position, or maybe they're networking, some of their colleagues are talking about the position to other potential candidates. What are they really saying about the job, the opportunity? And I think that's one thing when you're working with a recruiting team, those that have that background, who understand the candidate side and what attracts a candidate to the client. That's the missing opportunity from time to time that we see. And I think that's a gap that's usually apparent in 90% of the cases of the clients we work with.
You know what? As an outsider watching from a recruiting standpoint, I would agree. There's a huge lack of sizzle. That is such a good way to put it, for sure.
Right.
I love it.
Can I chime in one thing there too, JT, because I do a lot of this the strategy with the clients as well, like Georgia does. But I think the other piece of it is that there might be volumes of work of positions. So you might need to hire 10 salespeople through the course of the year. So how are you building your talent pool when you kick off those first 2 positions? And how are you staying in touch with those candidates that may not be ready to make the move, or you just want to keep them in the pipeline so that the next time in the next quarter, when you need to hire 2 or 3 more, you've already got them teed up. So I think that's another really important piece to that, being a visionary in your recruiting process.
Isn't it true? The whole pipeline strategy versus starting over from scratch every single time. I love it. I love it. All right, we're stepping into number 3, creating the plan that includes diversity, equity, and inclusion. Kristen Posen, you're a practice leader there. Talk to us about this, which is probably, I would say, the hottest topic of 2021 into 2022, right? Dee and I. So let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, absolutely, JT. Thank you. Diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, which sometimes is left out, is really one of the hottest topics in today's workplace. And it's for good reason. It's not only the right thing to do, it's a smart business strategy. And so you see there's a lot more companies out there hiring DE&I experts. We even hired one in-house ourselves to provide some education to our staff internally. And then we've also engaged with another company to train our recruiters to be able to do that as well. There was a study by World at Work in 2021 that 83% of organizations nationwide are implementing such plans. And another reason for that too is because after COVID, as we're kind of getting over COVID-19 and the effects on the workplace, we see how that really disenfranchised a lot of people of color, women. These are folks that couldn't work remotely, ended up having to take on childcare duties versus a minimum wage job. So there were a lot of disparities there, and we're trying to recover from that. So again, like I said, I am not a DEI expert. We certainly recommend that you hire one for your firm, and then make sure that what plan you put together really aligns with your culture. Anything from building out that strategy that you have in terms of recruitment. And then, like Georgia was mentioning, creating partnerships really with your hiring managers and getting them to really understand how to elevate diversity and inclusion in their recruiting practices, whether it be, starting at just with sourcing, how are you doing your sourcing? Are there some unconscious biases going on when you're doing sourcing, or somewhere along in the interview process? Because it takes a long time to get a candidate from sourced to hired, and there could be a whole lot of steps in between where that unconscious bias can come into play.
It's interesting. So Kristen, I have a question for you. Are you seeing companies, especially your clients, coming to you now and that number's high, over 80% saying that they're thinking about or planning to include DEI in their strategy. When they're coming to you, what are some of the things they're asking, or what are some things they're saying that's telling you that they're paying attention to this?
We're talking a lot more about job descriptions, because there are a lot of job descriptions out there that our clients don't realize are actually turning candidates away, diverse candidates. For example, the use of masculine and feminine words in job descriptions can instantly turn off candidates. And another example is just using the word preference in terms of experience. We really strongly encourage our clients to only put what the true requirements are. You might share with us as a client, as we're out, looking for the ideal candidate, we would prefer that they have an MBA. But by putting that on a job description, you're having a group of individuals basically opt out, saying, in particular women, like, I don't have an MBA, so I know there's going to be other people that are way more qualified than me that have the MBA. I'm not going to even bother to apply. There's studies that have shown that. So, but just as an example, and also, thinking about even veterans in the mix of this. I know, we all know what the legal ramifications are of excluding people of national origin, ancestry, sex, age, physical or mental disability, but a lot of times veterans are left out of that the mix there.
Another great example, and thank you for that, because I think I wanted people to hear that and to realize something as simple as a job description at the very front end of your hiring process is already impacting this, and having experts like Duffy Group be able to get involved in that is key. Love it. Love it. All right, team, I want to keep the process going. We are covering some great stuff. For those of you just jumping in, we're talking about the 8 steps you can take to really make sure that your recruiting strategy is in tip-top shape for 2023. We're here with members of Duffy Group. These women are outstanding. And we're now on number 4, where we're talking about shoring up your brand. Colleen Neese, practice director, also talking about. Colleen, share us, what does that mean, shoring up your brand?
Sure, sure. Well, thank you, JT. So, of course, when candidates are looking at making a job change, the first thing that they're going to do is they are going to do their research on the company. And so, this research involves really, going everywhere and anywhere that they can get their hands on information on your organization. And so, that can be as simple as Googling your company. So, where's the first place that's going to lead candidates? Of course, your company website. So it is absolutely critical that you have your website up to date. You want to have the branding, genuinely reflect, who you are as an organization. And studies show that 86% of job seekers are doing research on the company. I think it's more like 100%. I think any candidate who is applying for a job at the very least is going to look on the company website. But then they're going to typically take things a step further. And so it's really important that you make sure that you know what is out there. So going to places like Google reviews or Glassdoor reviews, and making sure that if there are negative reviews out there, that you are addressing why. It's my understanding that it's quite a process to remove a negative review from there. So you want to get that process started before you have a bunch of potential hires looking at negative information and then not applying. And then also, places like LinkedIn, you want to have consistent branding and messaging. For example, if you were to look at all of us here at Duffy Group, we really strive to have consistent branding and messaging on all of our LinkedIn profiles. And you want to make sure that you're representing the organization in a positive and professional manner. And last but not least, I would say, as they're going through the interview process, how you treat candidates. And this is in regards to your email communications, how responsive you are, all of those things. Candidates are judging you. And so, partnering with your marketing department and making sure that all of these things are in line and that they're representing you accurately and in a positive way is going to make a huge difference in your recruitment.
Okay, I love that you're saying this because that Work It Daily, we're the advocate for the worker.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, today, they are no longer job seekers, they are job shoppers, which is really coming in line with what you're saying, right? That just they're going out and they're doing their homework and they want to work for a brand, and hence the term employer branding, right, that we're seeing. So we know that whether you like it or not, those reviews, like you said, Glassdoor, Indeed, those sites, they can hurt you. I'm curious, do you, when you work with a company, do you go out and do like an audit, or do you actually go and just pretend that you're a job seeker to kind of get that sense of that experience? How do you recognize and kind of point out, hey, here are some things that are off brand?
We do, JT. In fact, one of the very first things that we do in our recruitment process is, we have what's called a search intake meeting with our clients. So with the stakeholders. So typically the hiring leaders and perhaps an HR leader. And that is where we get all of the information that we need to put together our job summary and what we're going to be putting out there to all of the candidates that we're talking to. And if we do any job postings. And so we need to make sure that that information, again, is consistent and accurate and is representing the organization the way they want to be represented. So yes, we do that. We've learned the hard way that not all organizations have that buttoned up on the front side. And, I had a search that we worked on that, unfortunately, we didn't do that due diligence, and we didn't know that there were negative Glassdoor reviews on the company. And that was something that we had to address with candidates as we were going through the process. And so we now know that that's really something that needs to be fixed before.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. It makes so much sense. I love it. Love it. Love it. All right. So speaking of inventorying, right? We're inventorying their brand. Now we're talking about number 5, really reviewing and understanding their benefits package, kind of inventorying what besides salary, right, is available. Kathleen, talk to us about that and why that becomes so important when you're out recruiting this kind of higher level talent.
Well, yeah. And so I'm going to really talk to this as an employer. So our company has grown 150% in the last 2 years. And we were founded as a predominantly working women. We've been remote since the beginning of time. And the predominant employee that worked here were moms who were professionals that wanted to be able to have that balance in their life, pick their kids up at the bus stop and not feed them Pop-Tarts, right? Well, fast forward this many years, another 30 years, we've grown so fast. And now we're hiring people who have experienced maybe less than 10 years of work experience, or we've been hiring new college graduates. Okay, that was a population I would never touch in the past, but now we need to. So I'm old. I don't know what a new college graduate or somebody who's been, what kind of benefits that they want, but we've had, we have people that are of childbearing age. And so we need to look at our medical insurance and make sure that it covers pregnancies. We've looked at maternity and paternity leave, which we have never had to do before. We've looked at putting together HSAs so that these young people who can start making some investments in their medical, that not only do they do it while they're still here at Duffy, and we hope that they're here for a very long time, but they can take it with them, because that's such an important thing. I think that's, so the big thing I would say is ask. We can't assume, right? We can't assume that everybody wants the same benefits that I do, or that these other ladies, joining me. And I think the other piece of it is that we hear all the time is it hybrid or is it remote? Yeah. And, more and more people are moving towards the hybrid and less to the remote. And I'm even hearing more are going from the hybrid to the in-person. You've really got to talk to your employees, because that is one key factor that you can lose employees over, and how you're going to be recruiting in the future. If you don't find out what people are going to do. Now, we know that there are some roles that don't have the option, right, of being out of the office, but it is really important to just talk and ask and learn.
I really like this too, because I'm guessing as you go through and you're working with these clients and you're inventorying these various things, understanding their benefits, one, you can tell them, hey, compared to the rest of your market, you might be a little light in some areas, right? You're not offering some things that others are, but you might also discover they've got some unique features, some unique benefits that are probably more marketable than they realize. Does that seem fair to say?
Yeah. So part of the recruitment research process is that while we are out there talking to candidates about opportunities, they may or may not be interested in a job, right? But we do ask them questions about obviously their compensation and what they're looking for, but we do like to understand what their benefits are. So I joke that, with salespeople, right, maybe they're getting a car allowance, but maybe their top competitor is actually giving them an electric vehicle.
Right.
And that's what's driving people towards that. So, I think if you have a recruitment research partner in particular, and all recruiters should be asking those kinds of questions so that you can go back to the hiring leader and say, hey, this is anecdotal information, but this is what candidates are saying that they're looking for in order to jump ship and join our organization.
I absolutely love that. And it actually leads into, and I'm going to keep you on this subject, Kathleen, number 6, because, this is all leading up to creating promotions to sell positions. Now, this is something that I'm sure that most people don't always think about when it comes to recruiting. You're really talking about packaging it up and promoting the offer. Am I right?
Absolutely. And it really boils down to what Georgia said in the beginning about, one of the things that people miss is that sizzle. So, one of the questions that we always ask in our intake process that Colleen referenced is, why would somebody want to leave ABC organization and come and work for your organization? Or if you were sitting across the table from an ideal candidate, how would you tell them the story about this? So when we do an intake, and I think that this is what all internal recruiters are doing or should be doing, is, they really need to understand what the hiring leader story is. JT, you talk to us, you've educated us, it's about be brand or be branded, right? And so that's the opportunity for all of us who are recruiting to be able to brand our CEOs, to be able to brand our hiring leaders. We want to understand what the story is around the organization. They may be in a wonky, as I love that word, Sharon Grace. They may be in an unusual industry or a controversial industry. And so how do you tell that story and get people to understand? Or there may have been something on TikTok or Glassdoor, right? How do you overcome that? And most importantly, what is exciting about this opportunity? Okay, so it's a CFO. Or it's a vice president of sales. But here's what's exciting about this opportunity. You are at have the opportunity to build something from scratch. There's a CEO that's in transition. They've done a terrific job getting the company from point A to point B. And now they're looking for the new CEO to come in and take it from B to J. And that's the opportunity. And so that's really that's obviously what we love to do, as you can tell from.
I agree. And I think I hopefully everybody listening can see the point here. I think you're better to go to a firm like yours, who has a fresh eyes, has a fresh look at how the company is running this process, and can go out, and who's done it enough. It's your full-time jobs, so that you're going to do it correctly. I mean, just listening to all of you so far, you've got to step back and ask yourself, are companies really equipped to do this by themselves? Absolutely not. And should they be? I mean, no, they're not getting the best results, and they're probably paying too much money to boot, So I love this. I love this conversation. Sharon, how about some examples? I'd love to hear from Sharon and Colleen and Kristen. I know each of you have some examples around this positioning, this idea of packaging things up. Can you share a little bit more?
Of storytelling.
Yeah.
I'll just sum it. Yeah, is storytelling. And if it's a company or an industry, maybe that may not be that sexy. I stated earlier, I have worked a lot with the accounting and finance, and sometimes that's may not be that. But finding something of promoting. And recently I was promoting part of the story, not only the opportunity, the organization. It's a wonderful nonprofit organization, and it's remote, and it's accounting, and those two words don't usually go together. But the CFO has a great story. And part of the pitch was really describing her. And so for candidates that I knew, if they wanted and needed a mentor to continue growing with their technical accounting skills, this was that person.
Beautiful.
And she was so modest and didn't see herself as that.
I love that. So storytelling really is the key. It's all of you are sort of pulling the stories out of these clients in order to be able to position these jobs better. I love it. Love it.
The opportunity.
It is
opportunities, not jobs.
Oh, that's right. Opportunities. Thank you for the correction. That's so true. Holly, what about you?
Well, we like to think of ourselves as storytellers, and that's oftentimes what we say is we're really working as an extension of our client's organization to tell their stories. And we're telling it to oftentimes an audience that's just not out there looking at job boards. We're typically going to the passive candidates. And so we need to use that sizzle to get their attention. And, a lot of the work that I do is in the nonprofit space. And so, oftentimes our strategy is really making sure that there is, mission alignment. So, so that we are, recruiting candidates that are coming from organizations where they're going to have a passion for, as well as demonstrated experience in serving a particular mission. And so, a lot of what we do is going like to like. Sometimes it's, the budget size or the employee size. But oftentimes it's really being like to like in regards to the mission alignment that alignment when it comes to the company vision and values, because we all know that that cultural fit is so important in addition to having the right skills and experience.
Especially in nonprofit,
Yes.
so deeply entrenched. I can see that completely. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So how about another example? Kristen, you mind chiming in?
Yeah, to key off something that Colleen said, really our approach primarily is to look at passive candidates, because we feel like the passive candidates are already being successful in their current positions. However, they may be in an organization where they don't have much of a career ladder. So when we get the initial, no, thank you, I'm happy in my current job, we continue to press more and say, well, okay, that's, we're happy you're happy in your current job. Where do you see yourself in the next 2 years if you stayed at this company? What is your career path there? Because many times in our intakes, we try to gather what would be the career path for this position. Okay, I'm going to get you your ideal candidate. What's it going to look like for them? I recently had an accounting manager position come up, and eventually this position will be a plant controller, and the controller is going to retire. So there's a very clear and well-defined path. And for accounting roles, which are very tough, as Sharon has already talked about, to be able to kind of give them that carrot and say, you may not have that in your current organization because you have 6 peers and they're all vying for their boss's job. But in this position, luckily enough, there aren't any other peers, and this person will, allow you to take that next step.
That's amazing. Right. So you're really digging deep too. You're understanding the actual journey in order to match it up. I love these examples. Storytelling is a key. If anyone's taking away from today, that one is a biggie for sure. All right, let's jump on to number 7. Remembering that the candidates are still driving. Sharon, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, exactly. It's been a candidate-driven market for the past 2 years, GT, right? We haven't seen it quite to this extreme.
Never.
So, right. Well, remember that for now, candidates are still in that driver's seat. So, how you communicate and the relationships you build with potential new hires could be the difference between them accepting the position or not. So, today's candidate knows what they want. They have choices, and they don't always need to find a new position. So, many companies have done a great job with retention. I will put that out there because we are seeing that. But make them want to choose you. Give them a reason.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because people, at the time that we're recording this, there's obviously an economic shift going on. But that top talent, right? When we look at the talent spectrum, that high end, they choose you. They're always going to sit in the driver's seat in the sense that, like you said, they can stay where they are. They don't, if they're locked someplace else, it's going to take a lot to get them to move. And so I love that you're acknowledging that and making companies realize the talent you want, it sits in the driver's seat. They're not just sitting around waiting for you, but, waiting by the phone for the call. I absolutely love that. And let's drive that into number 8, because Georgia, kind of rounding out this before we start taking a whole lot of questions from everyone, it's almost like we're coming full circle, if I'm reading this correctly. And that is to just constantly reevaluate. So talk to us about that. How much do you do? How frequently do you do it? What are the logistics there?
No, I think that's a good point. It really starts at the beginning, right? So, we just walked through 8 steps, more or less. And when you work with your internal team, or whether it's an outside external recruiters, the idea is to develop that strategy and really evaluate on a regular basis. And we just talked about it being a candidate-driven market. It's not always going to be a candidate-driven market. Right. And the benefit of being and working alongside of experts who understand the nuances of the trends and the marketplace and the people. I mean, this is a people-oriented business. So we have to understand what's motivating candidates, and that can change from time to time, week by week, month by month. So one of the benefits of developing a strategy is you touch base with that strategy. And in our world, it's all in real time. So when we're out there working and talking to candidates, we're able to manage. I mean, you can tell just by listening to Sharon, Kristen, and Colleen, these are experts who understand that competitive intelligence that we're garnering from talking to candidates in real time. will guide the strategy. Huge asset to a client, huge, something that they would easily miss if they didn't understand that simple, nuanced, people orientation and in terms of what we're asking of candidates and that competitive intelligence piece. So I think going back into that strategy weekly for us is a big deal. We do absolutely touch base with our hiring managers on a weekly basis to ensure our strategy is mobilizing the talent as we need to. But of course, with us, it's very repeatable. So, because we've at that point gotten to know the client very well, we can go back in probably after any search. We always are doing a debrief with our clients. What worked, what didn't work? How do we want to tailor this differently? And upon each position might need to be structured differently in terms of what we say and how we say it. So again, I cannot stress enough the nuanced nature of this business. And the personalization of this business. And so having experts at the helm who are talking to candidates and working with the client directly in real time is huge. We just can't say that enough.
I love that term, real time. I hope everyone that's taking this in is understanding, because the business goals are changing week to week these days, and economic shifts like this, the talent needs can shift. And so to have a resource like you all who are staying on top of the trends, but also adjusting as needed is huge. And I think before we take questions, and by the way, folks, if you have questions for these amazing ladies, pop it into the chat so we can get them answering it. I do want to turn it back to Kathleen. As the founder, you've been running this for a long time. We got right into this today. We don't waste time on the show. We get into to serve the audience. But I think now's a really good time for you to explain to them, Duffy Groups run a little differently. Can you talk through what the business does and how you're different from some of the traditional recruiting companies out there?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, JT. So, Duffy Group, our expertise is in what's called recruitment research. And most traditional retained executive search firms have a research function. And that's where I started my career. I worked for a boutique firm for about 8 years. I started my business in the early 90s. And at that point, I was really good. I was a very good researcher. And my decision was, did I try to sell my expertise to other search firms, or did I take it into corporate America? And I thought, well, why not sell it to corporate America? And and it took off. And here we are 31 years later. And so what recruitment research is it's a 5-step process. And as it's been alluded to in our conversation today, we start with an intake and put that strategy together. The second stage is the name generation. Kristen mentioned that we go after passive candidates. So that's where we go and identify the people or the persons who are in the job that you're looking to hire. The third step is the pitch. That's the telling of the story. The fourth step is profiling the candidate, putting those interview notes together. And the fifth step is the research and reporting out. And that's where Georgia was talking about the competitive intelligence. And so I think as we're, that's just the quick overview of it. But I think as we're talking about putting these recruiting strategies together for 2023, there are lots of tools that you need to have in your toolbox. So, you need to have good posting strategies. You do need to have good external partners, but people are not familiar with recruitment research. And that's one of the reasons why we wrote our book to elevate the awareness of it. It is that collaborative partner who is going to be out there hunting for those people and helping you to create these databases and these talent pools and help you to be proactive, but also to help you vet external candidates against some of your internal candidates to make sure that you're doing your due diligence to all of your hiring leaders.
I love it. And I hope people are starting to understand that, because, I think that a lot of hiring managers go, oh, I have a need. I need to make a hire. I make a hire. And what you're hearing today is that, oh, wait, this is a much more strategic process that can be put in place to bring in, like you said, a pool of talent, to bring them through a funnel, to nurture those so that there's always a candidate pool for your company, so that you're not being reactive. I mean, this is what I love about this. You said this is a very proactive recruiting strategy rooted in research. And so I'm a fan, and that's why I was really glad that you all would come on and talk about this today, because I want as many people as possible, hiring managers, maybe recruiters that are sitting there in their organization right now, have their eyes open up a little bit to, this is working smarter, not harder, which is really needed right now for sure.
And I think that one other piece, if you don't mind me, JT, is that there also is that pricing component. So when you, with a recruitment research model, we all bill by the hour. And so it's not on the number of candidates that you hire. So when I used the example earlier, if in your plan you have 10 salespeople that you need to hire, some recruiting models would charge you for every single head. Right. With a recruitment research partner, you are just paying for the amount of time that's expended. And so therefore your return on your investment is easily 50% or less of traditional recruiting firms. So there's another good reason to do that. There's incredible ROI.
Huge reason. And I can just say from experienced folks and, having a resource like this, an outside resource that does this for many different companies in many different verticals, is giving you a better service than you trying to build that in-house. It's so much better to partner. This is one of those moments where it is better to partner. So let's take a couple of questions. One question here from a LinkedIn user is, one of the biggest challenges is companies meeting their potential candidate's salary range based on cost of living. I was curious how companies are meeting those challenges and what do you do to counterbalance those needs? So ladies, this must be something you're running into, right? We're seeing this disparity between companies have sort of built their budget and this is what they have to spend, but the talent they're seeking is saying, hey, no, this is what I want. How do companies navigate that, and what advice do you give them?
Well, I'll jump in here and just say that I have always had a cost of living calculator open on my computer. 24/7, I have that link open, and I have trained our recruiters to as well, so that they are aware of the cost of living differences before they even speak with the candidate. And just having that information available and understanding, is this going to be a significant increase? Is it even sensible to ask the person to make this change? So of course, there's two places in the country that jump out as, the more challenging locations, and that's, California as well as New York. And so, just being aware on the front side is so important in utilizing those cost of living calculators to arm yourself with the knowledge that you need. But, and I'll let other people speak to this because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm in the nonprofit space. And so money is oftentimes not the carrot that we're dangling. We are really recruiting by mission alignment. And so I'll let others jump in on the cost of living issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say too that if it's not in their budget, let's say a base salary, and they say, no, this is our budget. What other things could you offer this candidate that might make up for that base salary? I mean, certainly people have bills to pay, so they need a certain dollar amount. But if you can offer them more PTO time, maybe there's a signing, like a retention bonus. So 6 months after they've been there, they've achieved these 3 goals, then they're going to get a bonus for that. There's other ways to incent them and attract them if you feel like your budget's just so restricted in terms of the base pay. You didn't want to pay employee number one something completely different than your existing employees, because that disparity can cause issues as well.
Yeah, and I love that. I think as I listened to all of you today, what I took away from it was, because you get to know the client so well and you know what they have to offer, when you're outsourcing these candidates, all candidates are different too. So it gets kind of interesting that you sit in a unique position to be able to see what trade-offs you could offer a candidate so that it is a good fit. I love that. I just love that you get to know the process so well on behalf of the client that you're making a better match, if that makes sense. Am I reading that correctly? I mean, that's certainly how I'm taking it in. It's really cool. So ladies, I don't know where 45 minutes goes with you all, but that went really, really quickly. And I want to thank everyone for being on here today. Most importantly, I want to tell everybody right now, jot their names down. You can hit this on pause if you're watching the recording, and go find each and every one of them on LinkedIn and send them a custom connection request and saying, I saw you on Recruiter Table Talk with JT and I'd love to connect, because They are incredible resources, as you've heard here today. And I know for a fact they said in advance, I could say that so that you could all go ask them any additional questions if we couldn't cover them today. But with that, I want to wrap up, and I want to give each one of you a chance to just tell us the one thing you really want clients to think the most about it from the perspective of, what you do at Duffy Group. What do you really want them to keep in mind in 2023? And I don't know, I'm going to pick on, I'll pick on Kathleen first, and then I'll let her toss the ball to somebody on the team. We'll go right around.
So what I want hiring leaders to take away or to walk into 2023 with, is that what you're?
Absolutely. What's the most important thing in your mind?
I think it's really the story. I think that, and when you were on my podcast and you said it earlier, candidates are job shoppers now, and they're looking first. And somebody used the word being, that people are keyboard warriors. And I think that while negative commentary is not fun, it also gives us as the leaders of the organization the opportunity to really, talk about the good things that we're doing, right? Because maybe when they left the organization, things were in a certain state, but 6 months later, there's been significant improvement. So I think it's really around the storytelling.
Love it. Kristen, what about you?
I think as we look at 2023, it's about strategically hiring. So you need to hire 10 accountants by the middle of the year. How are you going to make that happen? What strategies do you have in place internally? Do you need to go externally? Even sharing what your hiring plan is with your partner in recruiting, whether that's, again, internally or externally, so that you can start to strategize that, because some of these cycles in terms of hiring do take a long time. And if you're looking for very specific skill sets, you're going to need to account for that. Understanding who are going to be the players in the interview process, what are their timeframes look like. It just, sometimes they jump in with 2 feet first, but not really understanding that, oh my goodness, it's going to still take us 3 months to hire this candidate. So just knowing all those things ahead of time.
Love it. Sharon?
Yes. This is recent for me. We've seen a lot of green managers. I'm hearing that term often from some of my clients, right? Of promoting. There've been a lot of retirements, and the succession planning has not been there. Really relook at that, at the succession planning, and put a plan in place if there isn't one, and enhance what is there. Look at the new talent that you have. There's a lot of mentoring that is needed. And I'm even getting asked by some of my nonprofit clients, their search committees looking for executive directors and CEOs, that if they may not find someone that has strong leadership skills, what can we offer, recommend? And there are other CEOs that look for someone to mentor, and there are some partnerships that go on in certain areas, I believe.
I love it.
I think that's a great thing to plan for the future. We have future leaders up and coming. They need help.
Great point. There's been a massive exodus of senior talent. Such a good point. Love it. How about Colleen? We'll go with Colleen and then end with Georgia.
So I will, I'll say culture. Of course, when you are hiring, skills and experience, education, credentials, all of those things are important. But if you don't have the cultural alignment, then, none of that matters. And so, knowing, who you are, who you want to be, the type of people that are successful within your culture. And again, going back to the branding piece that I spoke about, make sure that that is coming out loud and clear through your branding efforts. Show videos on your website, and just really let people understand what type of culture your company offers, so that you're hiring people that are going to fit and stay for a long time.
Love it. And Georgia, what about you?
So I would say, I remember reading a book by Jack Welch, and he talked about how the most important person in the room, the most important person that he leveraged on his executive team was his HR director. So his talent acquisition officer. He understood, and I think many business leaders sometimes don't realize, it's the people. You can plan, we think nothing of having a strategic plan for our organization, but we're not always thinking strategically about our people. So having that, valuing your people enough to understand you've got a plan, as many of our Kristen and a number of us have already talked about, that is really essential. And then the only other thing I would add is expanding our mind as to what we're looking for. I think sometimes hiring managers go in thinking every candidate needs A, B, C, and D, but do they really? And I think when you're working with partners like ourselves, we will be able to detect and assess that for the client. But I do think keeping an open mind to talent in this environment is very, very important.
I love that you said that. I love it. And I love that each of you was able to bring something different to that close, which, folks, I just want to close by saying that just shows you the depth of knowledge, the gravitas that's happening at Duffy Group, which is why I'm such a fan. And I'm so glad that you came on and shared today, ladies. So once again, folks, the Duffy Group, check them out on LinkedIn. You will find each and every one of these talented women on there as well. I hope you go connect with them and tell them that you saw them on Recruiter Table Talk. And so until next time, remember, if you want to win, you got to work it daily, my friends. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.